Swamps are the result of flooding in damp areas, but much more than what your science teacher teaches you, swamps are spots for the most bizarre things to hide. If you don't believe it, here are 15 shocking things recently discovered in swamps. Feeding frenzy. Did you get an invite to the alligator party? Because we didn't. This fisherman's biggest catch when he went fishing at a swamp in southeast Georgia was this video footage. The alligators are jammed in a canal perhaps 30 feet wide. Alligator heads bob on the surface while others, in the background, gyrate and thrash in the water as they snap at mudfish, also known as bowfin. With a high population of mudfish, you can almost smell them, said the fisherman. These rare cooperative feedings happen once every 3 or 4 years. These cold-blooded reptiles usually grow from 6 to 11 feet long and live mainly in wetland areas. Today, they're off the endangered list and thrive in swamps, lakes, and even on golf courses. These mostly meat-eating reptiles fascinate many people with their strength, speed, and ferocity. But there's even more to alligators than meets the eye. From glow-in-the-dark eyes to amazingly loud roars, imagine being surrounded on all sides like this brave fisherman.
I ain't never seen so many gators in my life.
He headed out in the early morning light with another boat close behind. Moments later, they realized they had about 150 alligators in front of them and 150 behind them. The teeming alligators were hunting together. Fasten your seatbelts because it's time for today's sweet topic. Some swamps remain filled for a very long time. And just like this one, when it was finally drained, the revealing result was shocking. The group of fishermen that sent us this photo said what they captured in a swamp shocked the whole world. So we thought we should check it out and see if it's shocking. Underneath the caption of this photo, it stated that these ladies aren't ordinary. Indeed, they might look like the same group of girls you might run into on a Hawaii beach. But these fishermen warned that they were nothing close to human. While the fishermen didn't say exactly what these ladies were, they did mention that they had fins for legs and their tongues were like serpents. They also mentioned that when they spoke, it sounded like the music whales made. So, we want to throw the question to you. What do you think these creatures are? Are they mermaids? Or were the fishermen just hallucinating because there's no such thing as mermaids? We want to know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to use the hashtag #SweetTopic. Python bounty hunters. Native to Southeast Asia, the Burmese python is one of the largest snakes in the world and is considered an invasive species. It began appearing in the Florida Everglades more than 20 years ago when the reptiles were imported as pets. The snakes feed on animals like birds and rabbits and take away those food sources from native wildlife like panthers, bobcats, and alligators. The apex predator's insatiable appetite has resulted in a severe decline in mammal populations in the Everglades, including endangered species. So Florida doubled its ranks of python hunters recently as the state steps up efforts to tame the invasive species that has long devastated the balance of the natural food chain in the Everglades. More than 1,000 aspiring hunters hoping to get the chance to remove the invasive serpent from the Everglades applied to the 25 new openings. The hunters are part of the state's python elimination program that so far removed more than 2,500 Burmese pythons since it began in 2017. They're awarded bounties based on the length of the pythons. An extra $50 is given for each python measuring up to 4 feet, plus $25 for each additional foot. Hunters can further collect a $200 bonus for each python found guarding a nest of eggs. Sinking island. In the past 6 decades, this island has lost 98% of its land due to sea level rise and constant coastal erosion, with a 5 by 11 mile island shrinking to a mere quarter mile by 2 miles. The Isle of John Charles, off the coast of Louisiana, is literally sinking into the ocean. Many factors led to the destruction of the island. Dams and levees were created throughout the Mississippi River, which disrupted the sediment flow that naturally prevented mass erosion. The nearby oil industry created more deltas and channels within the Louisiana wetlands, with the drilling hurting plant structures that previously provided more natural barriers to erosion. Coupled with rising sea levels from global climate change, the island effectively sank. There's one road into the island that floods at least once a week so that no cars can pass. This leaves the people of the isle with a difficult question: to leave their homes and livelihoods behind, or to stay in hopes for a different fix. The community here was meant to move to a new location together to preserve the community, but many are moving on their own as others refuse to set off from their land and culture. To make matters worse, the sea levels are continuing to rise and the island faced consequences from Hurricane Laura in 2020. Ancient roads to nowhere. These ancient roads that lead into Central Ireland's peat bogs are very impressive but totally mystifying. For one thing, some of them just end in the middle of nowhere. Several finds have been made in the bogs in recent years, including leather shoes, axe heads, and bog butter, which some experts believe may have been buried as a means of preservation. But that's not the only thing that's been discovered. Human remains found in the Irish bog could be up to 3,000 years old, according to archaeologists. The body, thought to be that of a woman, was discovered by the driver of a turf milling machine in the bog. Parts of the body, including the head and torso, which had been enclosed in a leather bag, didn't survive, but the legs had been preserved by the chemicals in the peat. Experts believe the prehistoric find may have been the victim of a ritual sacrifice. An expert has stated that the latest bog body found in Ireland has proven the belief that the Celts ritually sacrificed their kings to the gods. The body also proves they underwent horrible deaths if the times turned bad enough under their reign. The latest Iron Age bog body was discovered by an alert bog worker, and it bears the same hallmarks of ritual torture. Secret Everglades Camp. If you head out to the swamps of the Florida Everglades on an airboat, you can tour one of the few camps secluded deep in the swamp. This camp sits on stilts in the middle of the gator-inhabited fresh water of South Florida. This camp has its very own helicopter pad. Talk about a lavish life off the grid. In fact, there are as many as 6 incredible isolated houses on stilts in the Florida Everglades, mostly accessible by airboats. These weekend homes are surrounded by tall sawgrass and water. America's Everglades is a subtropical wetland ecosystem spanning 1.5 million acres across South Florida. Known as a biodiversity hotspot, the Everglades is filled with an abundance of wildlife and is surrounded by numerous human communities, including the cities of Miami and Fort Lauderdale. The Everglades is a unique landscape unlike any other in the world. Only the Everglades combine a subtropical climate, numerous distinct habitat types, and an extraordinary array of species in such a diverse yet vulnerable ecosystem. Only 200 years ago, this river of grass slowly flowed across nearly 1/3 of Florida. The Everglades historically covered approximately 3 million acres. So imagine yourself getting in a helicopter and planning yourself here for a relaxing stay, right in the middle of a massive swamp. Lizard Man. The Lizard Man is South Carolina's very own homegrown monster, and its origin story is like something out of a movie. In the wee dark hours of the morning in June 1988, a teenage boy was driving home from work when he blew a tire along the edge of Orr Swamp. He got out of the car to change the tire when he heard a sound, like someone running, getting louder and louder. Suddenly, from the darkness, it emerged. Blazing red eyes, green scaly skin, long black claws on its 3 fingers, a staggering 7 feet tall. What else could it be but a lizard man? The boy jumped into his car for safety, but the lizard man attacked the car, ripping off the mirror and gouging the roof of the vehicle. Just 2 weeks later, police were called to the scene of some vandalism. A car, not too far from the swamp, had been attacked in the night. Fenders had been ripped off, the antenna bent, deep scratches along the body, and chrome trim had seemingly been chewed off. Could it be the monster again? Over the decades, there have been sightings on occasion, and a smattering of automobile maulings, always within the vicinity of the swamps around Bishopville. But nothing like that summer of 1998, when the lizard man made his presence and appetite for cars known. Swamp eel. Body snake-like tapering to a point, small eyes, tiny scales, and finless, the giant mottled eel can grow to 6.5 feet long and weigh up to 45 pounds. The species can be distinguished from other anguilled eels by its mottled coloration, arrangement of teeth, and the long dorsal fin. The teeth in both jaws are arranged in 2 or 3 rows. One row consists of distinctly enlarged teeth that often form a cutting edge. The inner row comprises smaller teeth that are usually separated from the cutting row by a narrow toothless groove. Adults typically live in fresh water, but they do sometimes migrate into the open ocean. They also have a heavy mucus coating that facilitates their burrowing nature. Secretive and most active at night, but generally considered a slugfish, it's found in warm freshwater habitats, including small oceanic islands from the western Indian Ocean across the Indo-Pacific to French Polynesia, and as far north as southern Japan. They prefer shallow, sluggish, standing, or even stagnant waters and dense vegetation. That's where it often burrows in mud bottoms. They're found in ponds, canals, ditches, rice fields, and swamps, and are reported to survive in moist mud during the dry season. Swamp beast crossing. Florida panthers, alligators, bears, bobcats, deer, and coyotes cruise through wildlife crossings beneath highways as unwitting humans commute above them at 70 miles an hour. In recent years, vehicle collisions killed an average of 2 endangered Florida panthers a month. And for bears, the toll is worse. About 20 black bears die every month on roadways as they travel the state looking for food and mates. And we all see many other dead creatures: deer, squirrel, opossums, bobcats, birds, reptiles, and more along our roadsides. This hurts people too. An estimated 200 people are killed and 29,000 injured yearly in the US when their cars collide with animals. The good news is that we can prevent it, and we've been using technology to do it. Building safe crossings for wildlife can reduce the carnage to nearly zero. Wildlife crossings take a number of different forms: expanded culverts, special ledges built along rivers or canal banks under highway bridges, or full-blown landscaped overpasses. Wildlife crossings are a practice in habitat conservation, allowing connections or reconnections between habitats. Plus, similar structures can be used for domesticated animals such as cattle. Don't we all deserve safe passage? Swamp animals included? Creepy canopy birds. Most of the time, these herons look like your typical wading bird. Long legs, long necks, long beaks. But when it's time to eat, this jet black African species literally throws some serious shade. These black herons are not actually serving us attitude, it's hunting for dinner. It's called canopy feeding. While fishing, the bird will tuck its head down, spread its wings around its body, and create a sunshade of sorts, creating a nice shady spot for the fish to relax in. As the fish move into the shady location, the black heron scoops down and gulps up their nice tasty meal. And that's why it prefers shallow open waters, such as the edges of freshwater lakes and ponds, marshes, river edges, rice fields, and seasonally flooded grasslands. They don't mind a little sun. While some herons prefer to hunt on their own, most enjoy the company of others while they dine. On average, they'll hunt in groups of 50 individuals. However, the largest flock of black heron on record is 200. It lives throughout sub-Saharan Africa, from Senegal and Sudan to South Africa, but it's found mainly in the eastern half of the continent and in Madagascar. It's also been observed in Greece and Italy. Bog jogging. Meet your new favorite sport. Bog is a blanket term that's often applied to any wetland or marginal environment, resulting in a great deal of confusion as to what exactly a bog is. Is it a wetland? Is it a pond or a lake? And what are bog plants? Are they just plants that grow in wet environments? The answer is yes, a bog is a type of wetland, but it's not any wetland, nor is it simply the edge of any water body. And bog plants are those that are found specifically in bogs, suited particularly to the parameters created by these environments. More specifically, a bog is a type of freshwater environment with nutrient-poor, non-draining soils. And as you can see, they're the perfect place to get in the steps for bog jogging. Their soils are usually peaty and spongy, and the water is obtained purely from precipitation rather than fed by groundwater or other water sources. Bogs are formed in existing depressions created by glacial treatment, outwashes, kettle and pothole depressions, and glacial lake beds. These areas naturally have acidic, low-nutrient conditions, and over time, as they fill with plant matter, rainwater, and snowmelt, it creates a thick, peaty bottom that gives rise to the very well-adapted plants and organisms. And it's the perfect place to get your heart rate up and have some fun. Toxic tar lakes. Dozens of secret toxic pits near homes across the United Kingdom are being ignored by the government. An investigation found there are 34 acid tar lagoons officially recorded by councils across the UK, but the government has a record of only 2 in England. These acid tar lagoons are extremely hazardous. Corrosive swamps made up of unmanaged dump mess from oil refineries largely in the 1960s and 70s. Abandoned quarries across the country were allowed to be filled up with thousands of tons of poisonous gunge, and their impact today is detrimental to the environment, and in some instances, public health. One of the more famous tar lakes, the pit at Hoole Bank, contains 60,000 tons of toxic waste and has been set bubbling away for decades. It's a toxic waste dump. It's absolutely vile to be around. There's nothing living here. Anything that's close to being alive is covered in oil and tar, and it's just generally disgusting place to be. Incredibly, the Hoole Bank pit is less than 100 yards away from homes. Residents nearby are concerned and worried about the impact of these dormant sites. Having poisoned the environment for decades, cleaning them up will now cost millions. Haunted Mansion. Known simply as the House in the Loire, this 3-story building in France looks like the victim of a flood that once swept it away, but sometimes appearances can be deceiving. If you walk along the River Loire, you'll find this tilted building located right in the middle of the river. Believe it or not, it was actually placed there deliberately by a company that specializes in salvaging wrecks at the request of a French artist, and it was created as part of an estuary art exhibition, which invited a number of international artists to create large-scale works inspired by the Loire and its nearby estuary. Interestingly, the abandoned house is actually a replica of a former inn. The artist produced an almost identical replica out of cast concrete and had it placed on the right bank of the Loire, but strong currents and high tides caused it to capsize, and so the building was moved to a new location, near the left bank. Although the house looks strange during the day, at night it becomes downright creepy. The thing that really freaks people out is the light that turns on in one of the rooms, which isn't really something you'd expect to see in an abandoned house in the middle of a river. And today, the house in Loire is one of the highlights of river cruises on the Loire. Chimpanzee Testing Island. It's a story that seems straight out of a movie. Liberia, a remote West African country, has a secret place called Monkey Island. Too dangerous for people to set foot on, it's fiercely protected by dozens of infected chimpanzees released from a controversial U.S. virus testing laboratory. The rumors about the chimpanzees are mind-blowing. First of all, the chimps are claimed to have survived decades of abuse, involving deliberate exposure to invasive hepatitis B, river blindness, and blood cleansing experiments. They were captured from the wild back in the 1970s in a shady deal with local poachers, who sold the baby chimps to the American Research Facility. The jungle wilderness is now home to more than 60 chimps who are notoriously protective of its shores. Many of the animals are said to be territorial, and those living nearby are terrified to go there for fear of being attacked. Only a select few locals dare approach the real-life Planet of the Apes, and even then, most never get out of their boats. Tourists who have paid local fishermen to take them to the island are pelted with mangoes by the chimps. To some, the apes even have a monster-like reputation and have sparked bizarre rumors they will attack and even eat those who set foot on the land. Swamp gas motorcycle. A man in the Netherlands has designed a motorcycle that runs on methane freshly harvested from roadside bogs. It's called the Sloot motor, sloot meaning ditch in Dutch, and it's the invention of an engineer and artist who designed the bike because he wants to live in a more sustainable world. He got the idea while reading about a fisherman who used methane collected while out fishing to fry eggs. The Sloot motor uses a converted motorcycle engine. He drilled a hole into the airbox of the engine where it received the methane. Then he hooks a balloon to the hole which fuels the engine. The engine still starts with gas, but once it's going, it can use the collected methane to keep going. Basically, an upturned container floats on the surface of a bog collecting methane, which is naturally producing during organic decomposition. Once the methane is collected, the designer pumps the methane out of the pumping station using a bicycle pump. The methane sits in a balloon attached to the back of the motorcycle. The storing of methane is a slow process, up to 8 hours, and sped up by manually hoeing the bog. But it's enough methane to take you just over 12 miles. Mysterious Castle. Off the beaten path in the southwest corner of Hardee County, you'll find one man's vision of a castle in the middle of the Florida swamps. In 1970, a man purchased 90 acres of swampland and began transforming it into a real kingdom by his family. Solomon's Castle. He was known as the Rembrandt of reclamation, the Da Vinci of debris, the Wizard of odds and ends, and the savior of salvage. He would add a tower here and a turret there, and next thing you know, he's got a castle. Every man's home is his castle, and for this man, it was really true. He literally built the castle in the middle of nowhere. The first floor contains his galleries and artwork. The pieces are all made from recycled materials. Solomon covered his castle in offset aluminum printing plates that he got from a local newspaper. That's what gives his castle the shine that continues to attract people. There were additions along the way, the Boat in the Moat restaurant, and a lighthouse for extra seating. But the mysterious castle draws visitors each year. Before he died, the king of this castle built a 10-foot-long turn-of-the-century locomotive that sits as a reminder of his creativity. One of the best parts that he left behind is his heart and soul for the Solomon Fortress, and it can still be felt today through his family. We imagine you'll never look at a swamp the same way again after watching videos like these. Who knew they were more than just smelly, stagnant water full of frogs and attracting bugs? But before you get too close, remember what you learned about them. There's more than meets the eye.